Okay, and I'll just go ahead and start so we can
Yeah,
to
of
introduce
course.
you. So I have Tom Schick with me, who created the Major Tom's Marseille and also La Loteria. I said that right, didn't I?
Lotteria.
La
Yeah.
Loteria. Um, this deck, which is, I guess it's considered, I guess, an oracle deck for the most part.
Yeah, it's an oracle, I guess.
Yeah.
No, it's actually a game.
Hmm.
Uh, I suppose a lot of Americans refer to it as Mexican bingo.
Yes,
Uh,
that I've heard
it's
of.
it's a it's a bingo style game, except instead of numbers, they use images, and the caller calls out riddles so that you have to answer the riddle to know which image to mark on your playing card.
Hmm.
Okay? So you'd also have these cards on a bingo board,
Okay.
basically. Yeah. So I think there's usually like 16, I think, to a board,
Hmm.
and
And you
then
have.
just like bingo, you make a row or a diagonal or
Mhm.
four corners, and of course the caller will explain the game they're playing.
Hmm.
Uh, and just like, well, I don't know if you've ever seen any of the British comedian bingo callers, but the Mexican Loteria callers are every bit as entertaining
Okay.
and and build the reputations on, well, how funny they are, right?
Okay.
How entertaining they are,
Mhm.
uh, and of course how entertaining their riddles are. Because even though there's standard riddles, a Loteria caller will make a real name for himself if he comes up with a new riddle that sticks
Hmm.
that other people start to use.
Yeah, I know in your little white book kind of document, the traditional colors riddles are listed for each card, and going looking at them, some of them it's like I'm not sure if I could get them right. It's kind of
Right,
a
right.
skill to kind of, because some of them it looks like, oh, I could use this card, um, or yeah, some of them are kind of almost vague, almost like you have to know the deck really well.
Well, as with tarot,
Hmm.
um, you don't really need to know the deck very well to get some meaning out of it,
Okay.
right? Uh, you can read it entirely by the picture you see, right? And you can do that with tarot too, right?
Mm-hmm. So tell me
So,
about the
yeah, it's an oracle deck.
yeah, yeah. Tell me about the shirt that you're wearing and the story behind that.
Okay, well, gosh, one of my hobbies has been collecting um, vintage men's sewing patterns, mostly sort of mid century, 40s to 60s vintage men's sewing patterns, and then having garments made up from those patterns.
Hmm.
And this shirt is one of those. This is from a 1950s men's dress shirt pattern. And of course, along with the buying of vintage patterns, I'm also interested in fabric
Mm-hmm.
for making the patterns. And I stumbled across this fabric and knew I wanted it in this shirt. And so I had it made, and it was absolutely lovely. I even wore it to a reader's studio,
Mm.
one year. Yeah. And of course, it's striking enough. It gets compliments. That's always a nice thing, right? Makes you feel
Yeah.
good. And time passed, and somebody said to me, well, why don't you do your own Lotteria cards? Because I was wearing, I actually, this fabric comes in 3 backgrounds. This is the white background, and there's what they call a tea background, and then there's a black background. And I actually have shirts in all 3 of those. The other 2 are short sleeve shirts. But, and somebody, noticing I was wearing these images all the time said, well, why don't you make your own? And so I did.
So how did you create the deck? I know in the last one you went through the process of how you made it and how you came up with the images. Tell me about that, because they're very simple, sort of elegantly done images, just enough. But I like the simplicity of them, and I love the colors because it really does evoke sort of Mexico with the vibrant colors that are used.
Okay. Well, and of course, what I was approaching was, because I knew going in I wanted to make it an oracle deck, right? And so then it becomes, well, there are artistic choices to make in the first instance, like what medium are you going to use? Are you going to draw it? Are you going to paint it? Are you going to go digital? Are you going to, right? And I settled on construction paper.
Wow.
And so those images are all made from cut construction paper, just glued down on a background. I used a sort of chipboard, so they would have some structure to the final products. And because I decided to use construction paper, I decided to limit the palette, the color palette, to the colors that I could find in a multi-pack of construction paper. So I forget what the final total is, but it's something like, I want to say 14, but it might just be 12. I'm not sure, to be honest, at this point. 14 sounds right, though, looking through them all. And because for projects like this, the easiest or almost the only way to get a consistency is to set yourself some rules for creating the images. So the first rule was the limited palette had to be in a multi-pack. I had 3 different brands of multi-packs. That's how I got up to 14, I think. Then I also made the rule that I would use as few colors to represent the image as I possibly could. That's in line with the color palette limitation. And then my final rule was that I would try to use as large a piece of paper as I could. And so these were the resulting images. Good fun. In the end, only one of the cards used all 14 colors, and that was La Chalupa.
La Chalupa. Let's see if I can get to that one. La Dama. You sort of, my Spanish is kind of rusty. I can make it. I looked up the meaning of most of these, but most romantic languages are very similar. You said La. Which one was it? La.
I think it's chalupa, I think.
Yeah, there it is. She's in a boat.
Yeah, that's right. The boat.
Yeah, the lady in the
The boat.
boat.
The lady in the boat. That's the
Yeah.
one. Chalupa. Yeah. And that's the only card that used all the colors. But then it's quite. It was always quite a detailed scene anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The only other rule I had was that I wanted to be as true to the Don Clementi images as possible. And of course, there have been a number of artists in recent years who have done their own Lotteria decks, but they have almost exclusively changed the cards entirely. So, um, and there are lotterias for specialty subjects. The Catholic Church has a number of different lotterias for the lives of the saints, for the Stations of the Cross, for all those kinds of things that they teach in catechism, right? And in fact, lotteria games are used for teaching all kinds of subjects. So, but I wanted to stick with Don Clementi because it's the most well-known of the various lotterias, and of course his history is quite fascinating. I can't remember his full name, but Don Clementi provided both food and munitions to the Mexican army, and knowing that soldiering is 90% boredom and 10% terror, he printed the wrappers on the food and the munitions with lotteria cards that the soldiers could cut out and use to play the game. Yeah, so at least giving something to do with their downtime, right? And then of course the soldiers then ended up bringing the game home, and of course it's now really the national game of Mexico.
Have you traveled in Mexico? And
not extensively, and my Spanish is weak, and all of that. For me, this is a little bit like taking a found object oracle, but it was fun.
I've been to Mexico once, and it was about 3 years ago, and just a little bit. I went to like some cenotes, which were really interesting, and I'm surprised the Mexican people. This is kind of generalizing. They're very spiritual. That's really a big part. If it's not Catholicism, it's the older religions, and they're sort of combined depending on where you go. But the cenotes, for a lot of them, are almost like holy sites, and you have these tourists that are swimming in them, and our guide had there was a shrine like with some burnt stuff and some figures and some little mementos, and before we actually went in the cenote, he actually said something under his breath and like did this motion in the water, and I asked him, I said, I saw what you did. What did you do? And he's like, well, I am asking my ancestors for permission to be in here and also for us to be safe. And I said, oh, okay. It was a very ancestral thing he did. And he wanted it to be very private. He really didn't want anybody to notice that, but I did because he was our guide and I was paying attention to him. And then we had a traditional Mexican lunch. And the women spoke no English whatsoever, and the food was absolutely amazing. Just some pulled chicken, some tamales, and it was like rice milk, like a traditional rice milk. It was really good. But that's when I was the only stuff that when I've been to Mexico, it's mainland Mexico, mm, we left from Cozumel, but I would love to go back and just I think the people
Mm,
are seem to be
mm.
very authentic, and it's just the culture there is so rich. I mean, it's been around, you know, forever for compared to America. And the it's funny looking at the cards. I mean, you get a sense of culture in Mexico and the cities, and just a little snapshot of you have El Borracho, which is
Mm.
was a funny one. I mean, the typical town drunk. Um, you can just pick these things out, and they make you chuckle or smile. Scorpion, um, the hand, the birds, and the cacti, melons. It's just really, it does evoke a sense of Mexico. I think you kept the spirit of that in the deck. It's
Mm.
kind of hard to
Mm.
get away from that with traditional Loteria decks.
I would think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, no,
Ex-
and I view this deck very much as homage to Don Clemente. Yeah.
mm.
Yeah.
I think
So
it's important to not lose sight of the origin of something, and build on it, not change it too much. I'm sort of a
absolutely.
traditionalist.
And then, of course, to increase the depth and usability, there's a one-to-one correspondence between ordinary playing cards and these
Mhm.
cards, and you can see it printed on each of the cards,
Mhm.
which one corresponds to which. So someone who reads playing cards could pick these up and read with them straight away.
That leads into a question I had. So the cards are individually numbered 1 through 52, but when you put them in that order,
Yeah,
it
54 actually.
54, it takes it out of like if you organize them by card suits, it messes the numbers are all jumbled. What
Oh,
what
absolutely.
what
Yeah,
are the
no, it had to jump because you wanted to line up the meanings.
hmm
And it was actually Valentina Burton who did the work to make those correspondences.
okay. And the other one of the questions I had, the main background colors, is that does it follow something or is it just complementary of the picture?
I was following Don Clemente,
Okay. Okay.
um, at least in the version that I had. Of course, there are different colored versions.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I was mostly for background colors following Don Clemente.
Um, the back of the cards is sort of the square, sort of rainbow grid. Um,
Mm.
how did you choose that? And
That is all 14 colors that were used in the front.
oh wow, I love it. It's like it's a very busy background, but it just I think it really works with this. It's definitely the back, and it's
Well, and again, uh, influenced by Don Clemente, the
mhm.
Don Clemente decks all have a sort of small continuous pattern on the back. And
Mhm.
so I went with something very similar
Very nice.
uh, and wanted to include, you know, the color palette. And so to
Hmm.
me, looking at them at least from a distance, comes across as brown.
Oh, so your Etsy website, you were so nice as to send me this deck, and I really appreciate it. But on your Etsy site, you can buy your decks, and you have
Yes.
some supplies as well, like your candles.
Yes. At the moment, I think all of the only other things I've got up there are beeswax candles,
Mm.
both figurative and some small tapers. Yeah, it's kind of a little hobby of mine. I just
Hmm.
enjoy melting and pouring wax. What can I say?
Where do you get your beeswax from?
I tend to go on Etsy and find small apiaries, family apiaries that are selling off capping wax and buy it from them.
Yeah, I love beeswax candles, the earthy smell of them, and
Mm,
just
mm.
something about them. The smell is just really, it's almost like an incense, but that smell that sort of
That honey
wakes
smell.
things up. It's a nice smell. Um,
Yeah, I like it too.
yeah, it's like any of the candles I burn in my area, they're always beeswax. They're not generic, like a glycerin candle or something gross like that. I want it to, you
Right.
know,
Soy wax. Yeah, I've
yeah.
tried working with soy wax. I just don't like the feel of the stuff.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, but I thought soy wax, well, if you want to put fragrance in it, soy wax is the way to go. But I just don't like the feel of the stuff. And, uh, you know, if you've got a beeswax candle, you can put the fragrance on top.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter.
So I guess wrapping up, what would you want people to know about La Loteria, and why? What's the best thing you, if someone wanted to look at this Oracle deck and say, I wonder if it would work for me, what would you say?
Oh, well, if you're looking for an oracle deck that works and is fun to use and is colorful, I mean, you've got to be attracted to the images,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're not, there's really no point. But if you like the look of the cards, I promise they'll work for you as an oracle.
Yeah.
Um, I suppose I did once a week readings on my business page for about 3 years before I finally gave that up. But yeah, they're very versatile. They're colorful. They're fun.
Mm-hmm.
They look good. They draw the eye.
Mm-hmm. And do you still use this deck for readings?
I tend to use tarot for readings, but
Okay.
I will pull this out every once in a while just for a change of pace.
Compared to a tarot deck, this deck, the oracleness of the deck, how does it differentiate uh, with
This
with the
this deck
responses?
reads more like a playing card deck than
Okay.
a tarot card deck. Um, Whether that's because of the one-to-one correspondence with the cards or just because that's kind of the way the cards speak. It's more direct and more mundane, is the way I would put it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this interview. What I'm going to do is um, make a video of the cards being going through the cards,
Sure.
and then put that in front of this, and then
Oh,
talking
that
about
sounds
them.
great. Yeah.
I think that people, because I know people love to see a flip through of a deck, and I had not seen this deck anywhere. I think you're just you selling it,
It's just
and
me selling it. It's
yeah,
it's you know, it is up on Game Crafter if you want to
okay,
go try to get well, if you wanted to buy a bunch of them,
hmm
that would
well,
be the place to go. Um,
but your Etsy shop
my
has them.
Etsy shop
Yeah,
has them.
great.
You'll get them quicker,
Ah, okay.
right?
Well, that's a
Uh,
good thing to know.
if you go to Game Crafter to buy it, they'll have to print them, and so that could take it can take up to a month,
Yeah. Yeah.
depending on how busy they are.
Hmm,
And then, well, mine, I've got them in stock.
cool. Well, thank you so much. It's a Monday. It's one of the Mondays are always like catching up at work, but um, thanks for agreeing to do the interview, and thank you for the deck, and I hope to talk to you soon. And I'll definitely send you a link to the video I make of this,
Okay,
and
yeah, well, that sounds like a great idea to do the flip through and then
yeah,
put this interview on the back of that.
yeah,
Um,
because I don't think a lot of people have seen the deck, and any exposure I think of the deck would be very, very cool.
yeah, I do too.
Yeah,
So I appreciate you doing this.
yeah, of course. Well, thank you so much. You have a good day.
And you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yes,
Take
you're
care.
welcome. Take care.